What's up, Star Wars Unlimited fans? It's Loopy at Late Night Gaming, and we are here for the Palp Yellow Masterclass, the deck that is taking Showdowns by storm. And I'm here with my teammate Platform. How you doing, buddy?
Good. How are you guys?
Yeah.
Good to see you, Loopy.
And you located a Sith Master in the wild, and hooked me up for this masterclass. So tell me how you know Sonny.
Yeah, I ran into him at the Showdown at Games and stuff, 60-person Showdown, and he took third, but he 2-0'd me that day. I don't know if it was my first game of the day. It was probably first game of the day, and we just got started talking, and I checked in on Sonny all day long, and struck up a conversation, and we were talking about late night gaming, and just kind of one thing led to another. That's how it goes at these Showdowns.
All right. Well, thanks for joining us, Sonny. You've done well at Showdowns with this deck?
Yes, I have. I've won 3 of them, and then third place at the other 2. As Platform mentioned, one of them was a common one. That's actually the biggest Showdown I was at, the person won. But total of 5 Showdowns that I've played in with this deck.
All right, so you got a binder page of laces, like I do?
I do, yeah.
He does.
All right, and Tacster, you're a Palpatine enthusiast as well?
Yep. Just an enthusiast. I've only been able to make it to one store Showdown, but It's been good, and have been playing the deck a lot since the May the 4th tournament, where I was introduced to it via one of the guys that came down to Madison for that tournament and brought Palp Yellow, kicked my butt with it, and I was like, I gotta play this deck. Because when the set came out, I was like, Palp Yellow, okay, like we have Change of Heart, right? Change of Heart's cool, but outside of Change of Heart, like I was like, that's just kind of like a meme. But then, like, no, it actually is a really good deck here. So
yeah, actually, this deck has been growing by us. I mean, I actually was knocked out of one of my Showdowns by a Palp Yellow. Mando, Rando Mando, I think is his name. A guy by Appleton that plays this. He calls his Steal Your Girl Palp, which I like. But it is a good deck. So before we talk about the decks, though, what brought you to Star Wars Unlimited, guys? What about you, Sonny?
So Star Wars Unlimited, the Star Wars IP, that's first and foremost. I did play Destiny, and I played a bunch of other Star Wars board games. But outside of the Star Wars IP, I really just liked the mechanics of the game. And I was looking into Lorcana. I was looking into a couple other games that were similar in mana-based. But what really caught my eye with this game is the action format. I played another game in the past called Dragon Ball Z Panini version and then Score version, and that worked the exact same way. And I did very well in that game, and that immediately drew me to this game because it works so similarly.
Yeah, I think the design is excellent, and it shows. It's very streamlined. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's certainly better than Magic, so I'm really excited. It's not surprising to me it's a hit. I mean, I played it quite a bit before I really committed to it, but I think it's just solid, and I think set 2 is going to be better still. Tacster, you're a member of Artificery, content creation team.
Yeah, and some of us have had more experience with trading card games. I'm pretty new. I mean, outside of Destiny, like I haven't really done things competitively. I've done some digital ones, but really not anything like I have Destiny. And then so moving to this kind of was natural. But honestly, I was like, I had my good time with Destiny, and I wasn't looking for a new card game. I know a lot of people moved to Flesh and Blood. I didn't really. I was like, I'm fine not having a card game for now, but Star Wars Unlimited really pulled me back, and I'm fully all in on this one for sure. The way it plays, the design is really good. I think it's got a bright future ahead of it.
Yeah, I think so too. And Platt and Sonny are local to each other. Tacster's another Wisconsin guy, with me.
Yeah, we're not too far apart.
Yep, and excellent player. I think formal runner-up in Destiny Worlds. Sonny, what was your favorite Destiny deck? Let me ask you that.
Yeah, my favorite Destiny decks, I didn't play it as long as you all probably. I played it through the first 2 years, but there was a triple color droid deck as well as early Palpatine deck and early Jabba. Well,
all right, Tack, what would you say is yours?
I think the thing I liked the most was the early on like vehicles and kind of like discovering the hero vehicles deck, and I feel like that was where it might not have been my best tournament showing of all the decks I played, but it was like the one that I feel like I had the most hand in myself of like shaping and
Yeah, I was
getting to play.
I was a huge fan of Snoke, with Watto and the Trooper. What would you say, Flat? Was yours?
DJ and Aqua.
DJ, and we just had a DJ reveal today when we're recording this.
The meat
But
grinder for sure.
I think he was better in Destiny than Unlimited, but we'll see. All right, well let's talk about some Unlimited. Let's talk about some Palp Yellow. That's what people are here for. Tell us about your list, Sonny.
Yeah, so here's my list, and so obviously Change of Heart is the key card to the list and why you would play yellow over the other styles. But there are a lot of nuances here in the list that I think are, in addition to Change of Heart, very paramount to making yellow work. There's a lot of disruption that yellow has in terms of both exhaust and trading, as well as some trick plays with sneak attack, shoot first, even ISB agent to ping, and Greedo to ping to get value that synergizes well with Palpatine as a whole.
Yep, and I mean it's a ramp deck. Would you guys agree with that?
Yeah, 100% is a rank deck.
Yep, and it's got some tempo. I think it's probably the single hardest deck to stop from ramping.
Yeah.
One game plan is with my Vader deck is to actually stop the ramp. I mean, it's harder to do with Palpatine than anything else. Vader's probably the second hardest to stop because he can also kill his tech.
Yeah, I would really classify the deck as a disruption or counter tempo ramp deck is what I call it. A lot of people call it a control deck, and it is in a certain sense, but it's not the same as a soft control, hard control that you see with the green-blue color combination, or even the double blue, red-blue color combination.
Yeah, I think
you're missing a lot of the main actual like kill your unit cards that are in like that's blue for you in a nutshell. Is like actually defeat units.
As a victim of this deck in a tournament, it felt more aggro than control, guys. Okay, it's got a gear shift to it. Okay.
Yeah, no, I can say that from both sides. I feel like so I was playing a blue green Palp into yellow Palp, and my takeaway was this feels unwinnable from my side. On the blue green side, I'm like, I have all these tools, but I don't have a way to deal with Change of Heart. I don't have a way to like actually get an upper hand here. And like at that point, they were like playing commands and bounty hunter crew. So like essentially, they were never gonna not have a Change of Heart. There was no way for me to stick a big thing to finish them off. So like it was oppressive when I first played against it with a control deck. And I think that's kind of like what playing like something like a Krennic or an Iden into it is like as well.
Yeah, the way that I like to describe it best is early to mid game, each and everything you're doing with the deck is to steal away tempo from your opponent. It's not your hard outing and stalling, but you're slowly stealing their deck's definition and putting it in your favor, right? For the end game as you reach the end game.
Yeah, and I think it turns the corner in a serious way on the Palp flip turn. From there it's really just jamming threats. All right, let's look at tax list. I mean, and you guys actually have some significant differences between the two variants.
There's some significant differences and some core similarities. Like the top end's the exact same pretty much with like the Devastators, the Walkers, the Vaders, the Change of Hearts. A lot of the same removal stuff, even the same low end. It's just kind of in the middle where it changes. Like, what ships am I running, and what ground units am I running?
Pretty much.
All right. So first we have the leader, Palpatine, and he's the, I think he is the only 8 flip leader, still leaving with set 2, if I recall right.
Yeah, I thought Jabba might have been when we saw that he was going to have 12 health from some of those images, but guess not.
Okay, so we don't need to read the card for this series. I think people have a general understanding of what the abilities are. But let's talk about his non-deployed side first with the sacrifice. What are you actually using that for as you go through the game? What are the various decision points as to when you sacrifice a unit to Palpatine?
Yeah, so for me, the primary sacrifice target is super laser tech. That is very critical to your early game, ramping as quickly as possible to get to the flip turn. But outside of super laser tech, which is kind of the obvious one, you can sacrifice ISB agent. You can sacrifice units that have taken a significant amount of damage but not fully been destroyed. So that's uh, in the form of cell block guard. Sometimes if you trade into a 2/8 2 attack unit, and even Emperor's Royal Guard, if it's traded into a lot of people trade into it just to get it to that point where they can take it out with a single attack on their next unit. But at that point, you might think it's favorable to go ahead and switch it out for another card that you can use late game. And
a lot of it can be opportunity based too, of like, what if they have a guy with 1 health remaining and you have the opportunity to ping your guy off. That's like it's very much a flow to like how, like, obviously you need to ramp when you need to ramp, but for the other things it definitely comes at a like, find your damage where it needs to fit in. It's hard to like say there's a hard rule for it.
Right.
yeah, and there's not necessarily a hard rule, just like you said. A lot of times you will also trade away units that they have a lot of big impact by just staying on the board, but you need to ping something and then steal with Palpatine, right? So you may trade off a unit that's very good in that situation. And the last thing I'll mention about trading sacrificing units is a lot of times that you or your opponent will be arena dodging, right?
Yep.
And for that situation, and a unit might not be effective in a certain arena, and you can trade that off or sacrifice that off.
Yeah, or keep them from using the super laser tech. I mean,
Yeah.
I was
That comes up too often.
all right, and then
Draw. Plus, Loopy, the draw. You get that draw after you do it.
yep, and
Yeah.
as far as
They're all huge.
yep, as somebody
Huge.
that plays a lot of red, I mean, I always have discard in my red decks. I love Force Throw, and I take Force Surrender. I still will Force Surrender Palpatine and even Palpatine Yellow, because I think it's still effective to kind of clear your ground for Vader slightly before Palpatine's, mid-game turn. But I think Palpatine's the most resistant leader to it by a long shot because of his draw. I've had Palp Yellow crawl back into games against both Churd and Vader that any other deck probably just loses to because they're top decking. Okay, and then there's synergy with unit steal and sacrifice too.
Yep.
Right, because you can sacrifice the opponent's units that you took temporarily with Change of Heart. All right. So the other thing about Palpatine is he takes control of a damaged unit. How often are you flipping Palpatine, right away on 8?
So for me, I think it's maybe 40% of the time I'm flipping it immediately, and then the other 60% of the time I am saving it for a play that maybe my opponent is playing around the Palp, and they think that I'll flip it and take something that's not as impactful. So I'll save it for kind of like a counter, kind of counter to their playing around it, right? So a lot of times when I ramp to the flip turn, I do it intentionally to flip to flip and steal, right? And that is probably that 40% scenario where I'll immediately flip it and take a unit. Otherwise, it would be a little bit later, maybe even much later. Sometimes it doesn't even flip in a game because it just puts that threat of stealing, and then you finish the game other ways.
All right, you agree with that, Tacster?
I think it depends on the matchup mostly. Like, obviously versus aggro, you just need to get Palp out as fast as you can if you get to him.
I agree. Get him out.
versus control, that's where you're kind of like playing the like chicken of like, what are you gonna give me? What are you gonna feed me? And then you just be like, well, then I'm just gonna take that with change of heart, kill it, and then now you got to still deal with Palp because he's still gonna come and get you. Like the ever looming threat of Palp is a pretty big deal. But like against like I think like a prime example of like red green Vader is one where I do probably flip almost immediately every time because that's a very much of a tempo game where like I just like you're gonna give me something. It's gonna be like a ruthless Raider or a Vader unit, and I'll take your scraps because I just need to take tempo of the board, barrage off one of those bodies or Palpatine himself, and then I've got control of the board, and then you just have tempo for the rest of the game from there. So like it just depends on the matchup, but yeah, I don't know what it ends up being. It just depends on what you're playing a lot of
Yeah,
times.
it's very important to make that distinction of when you want to use Palp Flip to steal something offensively, defensively, or as a tempo play, or even as a control play, right? They're all different scenarios, right? So it's hard to map those out exactly, as Texter mentioned, but um, regardless, it's a great effect to have.
Oh, I think it's very.
Sonny, oh, I'm sorry, Vicky. Go ahead, man.
I was going to say, I think that it's very important when you're playing against Palpatine too to be conscious of it. I mean, with Vader, I mean, I think it's I will intentionally stay low to the ground. You know, I'm probably not playing Vader units unless your board is entirely clear. I mean, one way to wreck Palpatine is just not give him any units because then he can't damage one with a sacrifice. I mean, it's hard to do for long term, but some decks can do it with things like Barrage. Turret has some interesting plays. I mean, I can tell you, knowing that there'd be a bunch of Palpatine, the one card I maxed out was It Binds, because heals can actually very directly mess up Palpatine's day.
Definitely. Luby, that's what I was saying. Like, if when I was playing Sonny, he didn't pull out Palp in one game, I believe right away because I wasn't taking damage on my units. I wasn't hitting his units to take damage, so he didn't, because he knew if I did that, he would come out and steal my unit. So he was using that as a leverage on me, I believe. Remember that game, Sonny?
Yeah, I remember. And that's exactly what I was describing, where sometimes you don't even flip it, right?
Yeah.
Because it's just there as a threat to what they're doing, right?
I didn't want to attack his units. I just kept attacking whatever else. But if I hit his units and took damage, if I couldn't kill it, that was a difference. And it was very much a mind game going on at that point.
Yeah.
No, I think that's right, and I think that's most distinct in the mirror, right? Because if you have two Palpatines, whoever flips first is at a distinctive disadvantage.
Yeah. I'll mention that I played in the top 8 last week at a Showdown. Palp Mirror. It wasn't Palp Yellow versus Palp Yellow. It was my Palp Yellow versus Palp Blue, and same thing. That it was the chicken and egg game, and neither of us flipped Palpatine, and I ended up winning through a sneak attack play.
All right, very good. All right, Emperor's Royal Guard. Should you play this?
100%. I mean, it's along with probably Change Your Heart is the reason to play this deck, but even more the reason to play this across the different colors.
All right, so it's always a 3/5 because it can see Palpatine. It is a Sentinel when you have an official. What officials are you using to turn it on?
Yularen is the best one in Sat 1, in my opinion. I also play Veers. And Palpatine Leader itself is an official. There's certain versions that I've played cards like Moti. I play cards like Tarkin in the main sometimes, and Tarkin in the side sometimes. So those are my.
And there's more officials that are relevant in set 2. Cobb Vanth, we were talking before, Cobb Vanth and Scanning Officer are both officials and both have uses as well.
Yep.
All right. Super Laser Tech, the quintessential ranch card. Obviously, Palpatine can sacrifice him to do a damage, which make him a ready resource. So it's basically you pay one, but then you get one back. How much ramp are you running? I mean, it's actually all resupplies, all the Super Laser Techs, and then a command to boot for both of you.
Yep. Okay. Yeah, so I play the 8 ramp cards, and I think Tacster, you also play them in between them.
Yeah, I had the commands in the sideboard, but same idea. I mean, versus non-aggro, I feel like my main game plan is ramp as fast as you can. Just get it done, get out there, and then start taking tempo.
Yeah, and I mean,
That's where your power is.
and it's very difficult to stop Palp. I mean, I'm holding Force Lightning with my Vader because I do use Force. I mean, Force Lightning, I don't even want a Force unit. I'm using it to try to counter a Super Laser Tech because Vader can do that, and it helps. But I just want to get to 7 before you get to 8. That's really what it is.
Do you guys prefer to run the laser tech into something, or would you rather kill it with Palp to get that draw?
That is a really good question, right? So it depends on what you're running it into, is one. So if you can get an immediate trade out a unit, for sure you do that. But a lot of times you want to leave a unit on board with ping damage that is not in the same arena. So you will, even if they have a unit in ground, you might not run it into it, and you instead use the effect if you have the extra resource, along with what else you want to do that turn to ping that unit. And then if you're running low on card advantage relative to your opponent, sometimes you will ping it away as opposed to run it into. And then the last situation I would talk about is the resources that you have down versus getting that extra resource immediately, right? If you run it into something, how much of an impact is that going to make? Because if you run it into something, say you're at 4 and you run it into something, you're at 5 now, then you can immediately play a traitorous. That's important versus sacrificing it off. You net the same, and you can't play the traitorous, right? There's a difference.
Yeah.
And I made a mistake of playing out a Super Laser Tech against a Palp that had 6 resources out, and it was traitorous and then sacrificed, which is just a dominant play for the other side.
And that's a play to be worried about in general, at least with set 1 with green. And if you're the one behind in ramp, if you play your Super Laser Tech into their 5 resource turn, then there's a chance you lose it and lose the game because of it.
Yeah, no.
So what happens to the Super Laser Tech if they traitorous it and then it gets killed? Do they get the ramp, or do you?
Yeah, they do.
Whoever controls it at the moment it's defeated gets the ramp.
Yep.
Oh man,
It's nasty.
Yep.
Brutal.
If that was a game 1, and I wasn't thinking about it, but that was good. If I had a Fang, that actually probably then, puts it really back the other direction, because anytime you can Fang a traitorous, that's a huge advantage to the Fang.
True.
And
what about
the other thing is a Force Lightning could have saved me, but I didn't have it in my hand at the time.
What about a waylay on it, Luffy? People waylay?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, yellow deals with traitorous and a lot of Palp things with waylay. You can, if you waylay back after a change of heart, it goes back to the owner's hand, right?
Yeah.
Yep.
That's got to irritate you guys when you get a waylay Super Laser.
It's fine.
Especially on this card, right? So the biggest play that I'm scared of early when I'm trying to just do that ramp that Tacster was talking about is I waste my 3 resources on my second turn for a Super Laser Tech and then just respond with waylay. That sets me back a lot, I feel like.
But it's their whole turn too. I mean, it just depends on what it is too. I don't mind the play. I don't mind is them waylaying the thing that I stole. Like if you're gonna waylay the thing that I change of hearted and I'm gonna kill or traitorous, that's fine. Like it's not the biggest deal.
I don't mind that as well. And the reason being, and I'm sure you have the same reason, is I feel like they spend so much to do that. They've played their unit, and then they're waylaying it back to hand, and now they have to play it again, right? That's a lot.
And especially if it's like Boba, it's like, well, I take your fire spray. Yeah, I want to kill your fire spray, or I want to hold it forever. But
and they burn their waylay on themselves.
Yeah.
So then your Devastator is just going to actually stick.
All right, Darth Vader's a core card. I mean, I think that it's an obvious 3 of in set 1. I mean, and I think it's probably a 3 of in set 2. Too, unless you're just really leaning into Underworld and want Maul. But what are you looking for to pull out with Vader?
ISB agent. Get them sweet, dude. Okay, so there's some sick plays you get with ISB agent here, where you just like if you get because you can pull if you get the nuts, you get 3 of them, and you just ping 3 extra damage. That's crazy. But like it's along the lines of you getting the Death Trooper with Vader to just like get that extra push that you need to kill Boba. Just
I love finding trip Death Troopers. With my Vader. I mean, all of a sudden I'm representing 9 damage on board next turn.
The normal stormtroopers, yeah.
Yep, but I actually didn't think ISB agent is not unique.
The top 10
No, ISB agent. I've had some really fun plays with Vader and ISB agent. It's so cool. And one of the differences in cards that Sonny and I run I run the Cartel Spacer, and sometimes you can go ISB agent into Cartel Spacer. Get a tap down. So you kill a guy with Vader, you ping, maybe kill another guy, or maybe you're pinging the guy that you're going to steal next turn with Palp, and then you tap down another guy. So you did like a cunning level play here, and then you're ready to flip Palp out and take control of next turn.
That's an extremely smart play because ISB agent will turn the Cartel Spacer on, right?
Mm-hmm.
Whereas you don't have a yellow unit in a lot of situations before that, right? So.
Oh, that is good stuff, you guys. That makes sense. All right, so there's the boy himself. ISB agent does ping damage. So this plays well for you. I mean, I think it's not a card that's in every yellow deck.
Yeah, I think it's especially good in yellow Palpatine because of the synergy with the steel. But outside of that, I think it has merits across the entire game script for yellow Palp. So early on, you want to be able to trade units, and you want to be able to ping away units, those small units as fast as you can, right? And then this responds well to Death Star Stormtrooper, to Greedo, to even the Viper Probe Droid that has 2 health because you play that down, ping 1, and then you can Palp Sack to get rid of the extra health, right? And then it plays well. Maybe turn 2 to turn 4, where you trade into a unit with something else, but it has one health left, and then you can just play this ping it away, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those cards that doesn't seem strong unless they have like a Luke with 1 health left, right?
But what value from $1? Mm-hmm. $1 card.
Hey, you both have command. Have you pulled it back with command? I mean,
yes. So my favorite play with ISB agent is actually a reason why I feel like command is good in the deck too. Is when you ramp from 6 to 8 or even 7 to 8, you add this back to hand, and you have a way to ping something instantly for the Palp steal without using your Palp effect, which will take a unit off board, right? So this does the opposite. It puts a unit on board, pings, and then steals, right?
That is good stuff.
Basically.
Yeah, actually, I had not thought about that. I don't know that I've seen this. I guess I saw it against Tacster, too. But
yeah, like I don't know if this is common in a lot of the Palp Yellow builds, but I mean,
hearing you talk,
it feels good. It just feels good.
It's
just like
something
you play
that happens very
wow.
often with command. It's like my go-to target with command in that situation, because ISB agent is usually in your discard pile at that point, because it's one of the cards that you're playing early, you're sacking it, and then it gets there, right?
Somehow ISB agent returned.
Yeah.
All right. So on the other end of the spectrum, we have 10 cost Devastator.
Oh.
What's this for in the deck?
Ending the game.
That's right.
Yep,
ending the game, and then it's also to be an answer to control with their big game unit.
Right. And I mean, you kind of run into mind games with Devastator if another deck has them. Right.
Yes. Yeah. That end game unit war is something that I feel like this deck has to do its best to win, and this is very critical.
And Avenger too, right? Because Avenger answers Devastator if boards are clear, and Devastator answers Avenger all the time.
Yeah, they both answer each other.
Yeah, but you do often have a lot more like little dinkers in this Palpatine list than you might in like a green blue version. Like you might just have an ISB agent that's just sitting there and nobody's killing him and nobody cares, but the Avenger comes down and now suddenly you have the advantage because
Yeah, and I think Devastator just, in the Star Destroyer race, probably was the second best one set one, because I think Avenger is very strong and was able to carry some things. I think set two, actually, Devastator is now the best one, for several reasons, but one of them is that Lurking Tie, which just turns off Avenger and turns off Power of the Dark Side. It doesn't turn off Devastator. Actually, you can't kill it with it,
but it's still Sentinel. So.
Yeah, but I mean, Avenger, you can attack every turn. I mean, you have to kill that Lurking Tie. The Avenger ability never does anything because they can choose it, but it can't die. All right, this is a core card, Reinforcement Walker. Are you using both modes on this?
Yes. Yeah, and I think I use them about equally, right? So if it's the aggro matchup, one common play that I tend to set up near the end game is trying to situationally put a Yularen on board, right? Kind of as a dual threat for both Walker and for Royal Guard. But if you if you Walker after you play Yularen, you're healing 4, which is huge, and that makes the difference just enough against a lot of aggro decks. When you go down from 23 damage back into the teens or something like that, that's just what you need to squeak out the win.
Yeah. I mean, you don't have a ton of heal here. Your heal is Yularen in this dude, and this is the guy that gets you there. And you're probably still gonna need it for like you have a chance of taking a lot of damage from either green or yellow Boba and Vader. So
yeah,
it's got a big booty at 9.
Yeah, and and you're on a 30 hit point base. I mean, on the games you win against aggro and Boba Yellow, I mean, I know that with my Vader, I'm often winning with more than 20 damage on my base. And have stayed alive by my 10 points of healing spread throughout the game.
Yeah. And this tends to stick versus those decks, right? So if you play this and you're alive because of it, it's likely attacking again and keeping you alive.
No, you got to get rid of it with Vader, which isn't easy. I mean, it's Force Lightning, but it's one of the few things a Vader leader can't kill.
This card is very hard to get rid of in a game.
Yep.
Reinforcement.
Yeah.
Good card. Change of Heart. I mean, you both identified this as core. I mean, we talked about it before. This is the Steal Your Girl, right?
Steal your.
One of them. Yeah. Palp himself and traitorous otherwise, but yeah.
Yep. So what are you looking? What are you looking to? How are you setting up a change of heart?
So I always play this card 7 or later, right? And I think it's the same for Tacster. You never play this on 6 because it's just going to return to your opponent, unless in the really odd situation that you're able to end the game on 6. With that rarely happens in this deck, right? So 7,
or it's like a last ditch against aggro, maybe, if that's the only thing that keeps you alive. I mean, but
if it is, that might have come up a few times.
To have gone wrong for this card to be played in round 6.
Yeah, but on 7, it's 7 and later. It's just amazing. As long as you can have the one resource before the Palp deploy, this is always alive to take a unit, attack with it, and then sacrifice it off. And then it's nearly always live on the Palp deploy situations, unless they have something to respond to Palp attacking, right? Whether it's just a hard out or an exhaust. But in those situations, you're oftentimes not playing Change of Heart until you see that they've exhausted their resources and may not have that answer.
And I think people make mistakes with sequencing against Palpatine. I mean, if you're going against Palpatine and you have something big, it's not safe if it's late game. I mean, the first action needs to be exhausting your unit. So they're probably going to still kill it, but you don't have to let them hit them with you first. All right, so now we got some differences. Tacster was a fan of what my son calls the space taco, because it looks like that. But and Sonny, didn't have it in his list. I think he made one of the arguments for it. But why do you like Spacer in this list?
And I think this also goes hand in hand with me running Boba and Sonny not as well, is because it's more green or more yellow to actually trigger this. This guy, it's a fine turn 1 play. Because at minimum, you're just okay, well, I'll run it into your A-wing, and then I'll sack it. and then your A-Wing's dead, kind of thing. Like so, like it has the capability of taking out the 3 health ships, like it like the mainly like the A-Wing and the like the red 3 kind of thing. So like it has some play into that. Pulling it off of Vader can be really strong. Just the mid turns where you're struggling to like not fall too far behind, it can just be enough sometimes just to tap down Sabine, tap down any kind of like unit that you're worried about. Like probably the nastiest play versus like Boba Yellow is like if you can get them with this after they've already played cunning, you tap down their guy that they give +4 to, something like this, because that's almost always give it to like something that's like a crafty smuggler or their own spacer, 7th fleet, like something small that like you're usually gonna be able to hit it with this. So like you can get some huge gains out of this with if people aren't really playing around it. But like there's not a lot else in that space slot either. I do kill it a lot with Palpatine. I will say, like, if there's a lot of times where it's just like, well, I need a damage and I want a card draw, so let's just kill it. It's not doing a whole lot because, like, oftentimes, like, well, maybe it's the only thing in space. Just kill it. Do some damage in ground. I don't need the damage here.
I have a question, Tacster, then about that.
Mhm.
I would imagine that as a top player, you have to get used to. Do you get used to killing off your units? Because people want to build board state. Now you have to be Palp and just kind of like, okay, I got to kill some things off.
Yep.
How do you guys handle that?
Exactly like you described and even Taxter described, right? You're kind of trading with this and it's living in a lot of situations, and then at that point, probably it can stick as poking for 2 damage, or it can transfer into a late game draw and a ping, right? So.
Yep, and I would also note for set 2, it does have the underroll tag, which is something that now matters a lot to several cards.
And that's going to be really great going forward. And actually, that's one of the reasons why it's a difference in Taxter and my list is because of the underworld instead of Imperial tag that Cartel Spacer has, and my lower count on yellow.
Yep, but if you have McClunky, which is a great card, that might be one of the strongest yellow cards in set 2, honestly. With when played effects like this, I mean, that's some significant synergy right there. All right,
I mean, I want to use McClunky on ISB agent.
Yep. So Sunny is using a card that I mean I've seen myself play, and very few other people because of his horrible body. But why Tarkin?
Yeah, its stats are so bad at 4, right? 2 and 3. But it's in the deck because 1, it's an official, right? It adds to that turning on Royal Guard and making it just an insane trade value. But more than that, right? There's 2 primary reasons. In this deck, there's not a lot of options of single card plays at the 4 resource.
Mm-hmm.
You can always play Super Laser Tech and then use the extra resource to sack it off, but and maybe just play at 3. But as a single card for 4, Tarkin is an option, and there's another card that I played. We'll talk about later. That's an option. So I felt that's good at that curve to set up for later. And I play a very heavy Imperial package. In some builds, 24, but it can go as high as 26 to 28. And that's enough for you to be able to hit on this twice pretty consistently.
Yeah.
So my benchmark was 2 out of 5. You need 40% of your deck or higher to hit on it twice pretty often, but as much higher than that as you can to guarantee it. And the ratio that I run makes it probably at 80%, 75% to 80% hit chance.
Yeah, it's just Greedo that you have that isn't Imperial. Looks
Greedo,
like, right?
and then Walker actually isn't an Imperial.
Oh, Walker is it? Yeah. I forget it's the neutral one.
It's why I don't run. Well, actually, I have run Reinforcement Walker at times now with Vader too, because my Vader list changes. But I can tell you that it's actually Nerd Parker, who's the guy that runs the DB, and is a great resource for the community. He did the math. At 34, he hits over 95% of the time, which is my Imperial before sideboard. Sometimes the Vipers come in, which dilutes it some. But in certain matchups, Tarkin is a top 10 card in that deck, and Vader has a lot of very good cards. But, I mean, against blue-red hard control, I mean, going wide, when you're in the part of the game where it matters is how you win. And Tarkin can find the things you need. I mean, he looks bad.
This is a double solution in those matchups because it helps you go wide and it helps you draw your end game unit. Right. So
yeah, so a lot of times I'm pulling like literally a Vader unit and a Yularen, which is exactly what I need to survive it. And it's nice having the choice. You can pull Ruthless, you can pull all sorts of things. That's a card that's played very well to me. There's matchups that you also don't play them because I mean it's not good, but it's an option if you have Imperial density, significant. I think you also have a one of Veers in your deck, Sonny. Since we're talking about officials.
So it's just the official adding to the official package, trying to get the most value out of Royal Guard as you can, right? And actually, one thing I'd mention about Tarkin that we haven't talked about is because of that 2/3 body, it's so ignored, right?
Yep.
People don't want to trade into it, so then they don't realize that it can be followed up immediately with Royal Guard, or it leaves a body on board for you to sacrifice, just like the other cards like Cartel Spacer we talked about, ISB Agent, right?
I actually
you don't feel too bad killing a 2/3.
Just moving 5 cards. If you don't find what you're looking for, now you've moved 5 cards down off your deck, and you now got a chance for more stuff.
Yeah, I actually recall a game against a hard control deck where I had a Tarkin unit out, and then a bunch of other stuff that was exhausted, and he claimed early to set up a super laser blast, and then 2 lightsabers went on Tarkin, and that was funny as hell as the end of a game for lethal. So, 2 fallen lightsabers are non-unique. So Tarkin was double wielding fallen lightsabers and hit him for 8. And then I think he's like, well, that's something that could happen, just like the movies.
Yeah, I mean, he's been around a lot of Sith, so why not give him some lightsabers and some opportunity, right?
I'm a big fan of lightsabers on random stuff. And Regional Governor is a big lightsaber target for my turret deck, to the Governator. But I digress. All right. Boba Fett, not played in Sonny's deck. Why not? Why do you hear why you didn't play Boba unit?
Why not? For me, it's one, because I went with the Imperial official package.
Mm-hmm.
And then 2, because I felt like there's a lot competing at the 3 resource curve. So in every scenario except for aggro, my priority is to play a super laser tech or resupply at 3. Right.
Yep.
And this felt like something that it could be useful afterwards, but not on curve, right? In that matchup. And then in the aggro matchup, it's good if it's trading into ground, right? But I still kind of prefer to start Yularen and then Royal Guard rather than Boba Fett. And then there's certain situations where I would, and certain card lists where I would decide to combat space. So with 7th Fleet Defender or another space unit that we might.
All right. Tacster, what's the argument for Boba Fett?
He's a good unit. That's part of it. Like, again, he kind of goes with the Cartel Spacers. He's good to pull off a Vader. Even late game, just like pulling a Vader off, getting the extra stats from Boba is very good. It's just another good target for that. I will say that, like, one thing that I really do like Boba for is leader killing. Based on the way that leaders are worded and how he will basically always get the extra 3 damage the turn they come in. He's either acting as a taunt because they need to kill him so they don't lose their leader. But like, you throw Boba Fett, they throw Boba Fett out, Boba Fett leader into your Boba Fett unit. If they attack your base, well, you can now attack their Boba Fett for 6, kill your Boba Fett unit who has 1 health left, and now you've dealt with their Boba Fett. That's like. He's kind of just like an existential I'm gonna kill your leader threat. So.
Very good against Han, very good against Leia. You can one shot both. All right, sneak attack. I'm with Sonny on this one. What is this for?
Yeah, this is my favorite yellow card from set 1. It still might be one of my favorites going into set 2. But there are so many combos with this deck that some are obvious, some are not so obvious. So the obvious ones are the late game units, right? Walker, it can be almost like a 12 health swing because you're playing it healing 3, then attacking and healing another 3 and hitting for 6, right? And Devastator, it ends games a lot of times.
Yeah.
You can
Especially turn early.
Comes up,
What about turn 1?
yeah, it comes out a turn early. So you were mentioning turn 1.
Yep.
Is that the question? Yeah. So turn 1, the best play is to do with sneak attack is Super Laser Technician, and that can provide a instant ramp ahead of where you would be usually. And the reason why this is good in this deck is the Palpatine draws. You can so you might think it's a -2 cards, but Palpatine drawing back cards is useful. And then into certain turn 1 plays where you don't have initiative and they play something like a Viper Probe Droid or another 2 health unit, it's mad value. You take out that and then you ramp.
Yeah, and I think that's exactly right. And I've taken Viper Probe out of a lot of decks, for a reason.
Right.
I'd argue that the Snow Trooper Lieutenant is better overall. But a Viper Probe, sneak attack, a super laser tech into it is just an extremely strong play. I mean, I don't know that they'll come back from that, honestly, because they're going into...
they don't come back from that very easily. I mean, even if you're doing it into a Greedo or something else, it's huge too.
Yep. And I mean, since we're doing it, it's not your Palp deck, but I think Mando's does have the Snow Trooper Lieutenants. If you are running the Imperial package, I mean, I think that's a strong anti-aggro card because it will give Super Laser Tech's reach. It also has the,
and ISB agents too.
Yep. And it has
it gives them reach, yeah.
So, and if you have the Snow Trooper Lieutenants, you can consider sneak attacking a Vader because if he finds one, I mean, he actually can hit the base for 7, on his on attack because
very strong play.
Yep.
Sneak attack the Vader in.
Yep.
And with the Snow Trooper Lieutenant.
But
Nice.
it doesn't work normally. Okay, Vader with ambush, I mean, doesn't come in ready if you ambush.
You have to use it with the sneak attack and ready him.
Yep.
And then get the Snow Trooper Lieutenant hit.
But if you get the Snow Trooper Lieutenant hit, I mean, then redirect towards the base, and if you're running the Snow Troopers anyway, you can give it a shot. Because
plus you can grab an ISB at the same time.
7 from hand is pretty good. All right, 7 Fleet Defender. Neither of you, has, or did you have a Tacster in your list? I forget.
I did actually run it in the actual list, so my list here was not fully what I ran, but I did ran it.
And I think it's the second.
It's one of those things that I still hadn't decided where it fits. So when I originally played against it a month ago, the guy from at that tournament wasn't actually playing these. I think they might have had two of the guys were running it. One of them might have been running 7th Fleet, and the other was running the green one that heals. I'm blanking on the name.
Star Viper.
Star Viper, yeah. Consortium of Star Viper. So like they kind of fit the same niche there. Just a good 3-drop thing in space, but like it is awkward. Like it does still clear up a lot of space stuff if there's going to be stuff like aggro, but I feel like a lot of the times there's still other stuff you have to worry about. Like it's not bad, and it's still fine to pull off a Vader. I think like it's another good Vader target. It's another yellow thing.
It can set up barrage. I mean, if you need an early barrage,
yeah, it's one of your better things that's likely not going to die before you get to barrage off of it too. But yeah, I don't know. It's a really good card, and it's hard to say if it always fits in here.
Okay, so Sonny, you're not running one of the best counters to Sabine, Space Rush. I mean, what are you doing instead? Because we talked about this before.
Definitely. So this is the card that I was actually using for that Sabine Space Rush early on, and I played this card in most of the showdowns. Maybe all of them except for one. Right. The list that you saw at the beginning doesn't have this card because I've kind of taken another approach to handling the early space aggro, and the reason being this card doesn't necessarily make an impact in most situations unless you're sneak attacking it in, which you don't really want to do until turn 3, right? Because turn 2 you play it, and then it's exhausted, then it can finally make an impact turn 3 on. So I was thinking that if they start a wing, I'm going to eat those 2 attacks by the time that this makes an impact in a lot of situations. So how can I deal with that earlier? And Tacster has Cartel Spacer.
Yeah.
One card that I have is TILN Fighter, right? So I chose TILN Fighter because it's an Imperial, and you can pair it with Shoot First. It's in going into turn 2. If you claim initiative, you can immediately take out their turn 1 A wing, right? And that's the way that I'm getting to fix that matchup a little bit earlier than this card particularly would, or even Star Viper.
Yeah, and Shoot First is also in mine, which is also like works really well with the Cartel Spacer. Just like that extra little damage is pretty important a lot of times.
And I can't express the importance of Shoot First, especially in early rounds where you're taking out their unit early and they're putting behind, and you've got your unit and they don't. That's just.
At the same time, it's a card that I probably will end up cutting in set 2 with some of the better new yellow cards.
Yeah, it's a card that might see the axe in set 2, but for now it is really paramount to winning that.
I mean, I'm definitely putting McClunky in. Like, there's no way that doesn't fit in. Like,
Yep,
that card is nuts.
Which then makes you not want to do Imperials. I mean, it makes you want to do the Underworld, side. So this one's there. All right, Command. I think that both of you are running out of aspects, so you have to pay 6 for it. What are you doing with Command?
Yeah, so for me, it is that turbo from 6 to 8, or even 7 to 8 that catches people off guard. You can do it with Super Laser Tech and Resupply, but that's kind of those two cards people assume you run. Command, they don't always assume you run. But the best play for me is adding ISB agent and going straight to 8 from 6, so that you can set up a Palp steal. And if you're at 7 resources, you can go from 7 to 8 with this, add ISB agent. You'll have the extra resource to play ISB agent that turn itself and then steal something.
All right, so you're using the return function, quite a bit of it.
Return and ramp are the two almost always the ways that I use this, but late game, it does come up that you're in that end game unit war, you're adding the return and you're using one of the other two effects, because ramp doesn't necessarily matter at that point. You're either buffing your Palpatine leader, some other unit, or you're clearing a non-unique unit off the board.
That's the part of the card that bothers me the most about Command, is that it's a non-unique unit.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it'd be really powerful.
What's that, Tack?
It might be too powerful if it could hit uniques too.
Yeah, there's some big non-uniques. The Reinforcement Walker is one of them. I mean,
maybe if it said non-leader, I think that might be fair. It's like, as long as it doesn't one-shot your leader, maybe this is fair.
Maybe.
But yeah.
Yeah, well, I think it was a test.
Yeah.
It's tough.
I noticed that, I only bring this up because Sabine Green runs a lot of unique cards.
Most decks
so you
do.
can't really kill a lot of their units. If they start putting Sabine out, or whatever their units are, depending if you're playing yellow or green, they're all unique. You can't do anything with this card.
Yeah, so that's 100% the worst part about this card. But I will say that even in that situation where it's not necessarily late game but close to the flip, there are scenarios where I take off units off the board instead of add from hand.
Yeah, I mean,
because it just makes the difference.
You can hit Fighters for Freedom. You can hit Ruthless Raider. You can hit Reinforcement Walkers. I mean, you should look at cards carefully to see what's unique or not. Some things surprise people. Actually, I had not thought of that ISB agent is non-unique till we talked about the trip ones.
Yeah.
All right, Bounty Hunter Crew. What are you recurring with this?
I think, is it just me that's running this one, right?
Yeah, it's you that's running this. I did play this in the past, but
this one's definitely fun for the other like later game matchups, because you're not gonna play this against Sabine and you're not gonna really need it against mid range. But you get into the thing, you get into the big late game loop of, I have big stuff, you have big stuff. How do I leverage my position against your big stuff? Well, it's playing Change of Heart and then using Bounty Hunter Crew to get it back, and then using Command to get Bounty Hunter Crew back to get Change of Heart back, and then use them playing Restock to get all that back, and then there's potential for silly combos of just like we can play this game all day, but I'm going to keep stealing your stuff. So like that's kind of the fun part of it. a lot of times it's hard to use, and that's why I ended up a lot of the times in my sideboard, just because it's like, well, it can be good, but you really the ambush of 4/4 body for 6 doesn't feel great, and at 6 you're like never gonna play it because like the only thing that could ever really be in there that you care about is barrage, which is okay to pull back, but like usually you're not gonna be using that there.
All right, let's talk about the matchups and sideboard decisions. First, Sabine ECL. This is what you really want to see, right?
No, definitely not. This is the probably the worst matchup for the deck, in my opinion. And I did kind of main deck for it when I decided to play the tie lands, tie advance, and extra cell block cards as additional sentinels and other than just the Royal Guard, right? This deck has shoot first, which is amazing. And then if they go wide later, mid to later, you can use overwhelming barrage on that will help quite a bit. But siding versus them, my answers are just topping up some of the best cards versus aggro that I have. So sometimes I play a third cell block card in the side that will help. Sometimes I will play the third shoot first, and that comes in. And two cards that or one card that I play as a 2 of in the side, which I think is very important and critical to that matchup, is outmaneuver. So outmaneuver is something that you don't play early versus Sabine, ECL, and other aggro matchups, but it will save you a lot of damage right before you start taking over. So what I tend to do is I wait till turn 6, turn 7, or even the flip turn. I'll outmaneuver as much as possible and then take everything. Steal.
That even gives you an opening to spend the rest of your resources on actually ramping, where otherwise you wouldn't really feel like you have time to ramp against Sabine too.
Yeah,
Yep.
That's possible.
And Sabine,
I think it's a good call.
Sabine will almost never have initiative on her flip turn because a good Sabine player
Correct.
is going to maximize damage because they're going to assume they're not going to have initiative.
Yeah.
Most will ping before deploy. I mean,
usually Sabine, the initiative usually stays with whoever has it for the first few turns, and then by the flip turn, Sabine loses it, and then oftentimes Sabine will lose it until you can control the board.
Yep.
Yeah.
And I think actually Sabine ECL took you out of the tournament, Tech.
Oh yeah.
Who was the player?
It was your wife.
Hi, honey.
She demolished me. It was not even fun.
And she sliced through the other excellent Palp Yellow. There were 2 Palp Yellow in top 4, and none of the games were close against Sabine ECL.
Sunny's deck's better than mine situated for it. Like, I definitely have I have less officials, so it's harder to get the guards on. I have one less Silwag guard. Veer's just buffing stuff is good. There's a lot of little things, and outmaneuver does seem really good against that one too. So
and one more thing I'll mention, since we didn't mention it earlier with sneak attack, is the trade value, right? So if in the case that your Royal Guard's not on, you can sneak attack it in and trade with a ground unit. That's pretty significant. And then since the unit's going to die anyways, you can sack it off with Palpatine effect.
Yeah. And I think the reason that's green, if I would have went in the tournament, in fact, I thought about actually making a second Sabine ECL deck because I have the cards for it, and actually bringing it instead of True to Madison. I got lazy and I didn't do that. But it was the right call. I mean, I think for that particular tournament. And Palpatine Yellow runs a lot of things with 1 health. And that's very weak to a Steadfast Battalion with the leader out, which is...
Oh, yeah, that card is one of the bane of my existence playing this deck.
Right. So if you take 6 Overwhelm from Steadfast, Sabine's going to do a lot of other damage besides that. I think that makes the difference to where, it's there. Whereas the Sabine Yellow, you're probably still not favored. But what's your game plan?
Yeah, my game plan is answering space aggro and then walling up with this Royal Guard and Yularen, and then subsequently healing as much as possible. But it's a very tough matchup. A lot of things have to go right, for you to eke out wins.
Yep. Okay, and I think that's right. And I mean, it's part of it is Sabine Yellow is a very good deck. It has a lot of hand damage. They'll be running sneak attack a lot too. like for
Yeah.
their fleet lieutenants and their K2s. I mean, it's got a lot of synergy there.
Pride Strike
I
is very
mean,
dangerous.
that's probably what you want to
Falcon
see
is
them
very
use
dangerous.
early, though, because at least if they're using it early, they're not compounding on the board,
Yeah.
and you at least can take out their.
I think they're saving it late after your wall's up, because
Yeah.
if you get a K2 out on sneak attack and then you can
Yeah.
surprise strike it into a Royal Guard, I mean, it's still doing a lot of damage, as it hits, and then they obviously have 4 cause too. If you're
I
playing,
mean, I know it just depends on what people draw and all that, but like I generally am okay with like Sabine's like spending their surprise strikes early, because it'll often come at the expense of another unit, and at that point, another unit and board control is a lot harder to deal with than.
yeah, and I mean, you're trying to get your heals going against any aggro deck. I mean, with Yularen, right? That's the plan.
Another question for Sunny I had
go
about
ahead.
like Sabine. I know some people would talk about running Waylay for some of the stuff in aggro. I have never really even considered running Waylay in this deck. I don't know what your thoughts or feelings of it overall, if you've used it much. It just doesn't really feel like it fits a whole lot with what we're trying to do a lot of the time.
Yes, yeah, I had the same exact sentiment, right? And there are a lot of people that just they think that's outrageous, and they disagree with both of us, right? But I actually considered playing, and I did play I Am Your Father before Waylay. So my priority was trading and outing units, having something on their side of the board that I can steal rather than bounce, right?
Yeah, and if you're playing against a Palp Yellow with I Am Your Father, I mean, should they give you the cards?
No, definitely not.
Don't
Not, yeah, I mean, so if it's aggro, it's sometimes they give you the cards because they're gonna kill you anyways. Right. But otherwise, you never really give this deck the cards.
I think it's usually the wrong play, and people make that mistake. More than that it's actually the right play. All right, what about
if they use it to you on turn 2, then it means that they probably didn't have ramp, and then if you let them draw, then they will definitely have ramp probably.
Yeah.
Right. Boba Yellow. Game plan?
So my game plan for Boba Yellow is I treat it as an aggro deck, right? And it's almost the same as both Sabine, Yellow and Green, and even Leia, except I tend not to side in the outmaneuvers because I feel like they have a little bit more in ground that I can directly trade with, and they're in space. It's usually combination of Vet's Fire Spray and 7th Fleet Defender, but it's not like as early space aggro heavy as some of those other decks. So it's virtually the same. So Shoot First is very good versus that deck. Cards like Cell Block Guard and Royal Guard behind Yularen is very good. And then I think ISB Agent in that matchup pinging away the shield off of the Crafty Smuggler is strong early, and then pinging away Greedo is strong early, right?
Okay.
My key approaches.
All right, Boba Green.
Tacster, you want to talk about how you side, or you want me to?
I mean, Boba Green, you're still just trying to ramp. It's not as aggressive. As often with Boba goes, if you can avoid a really nasty flip turn for them, try not to have a super laser tech that you want to kill out on the turn that Boba comes out, so that like there's a good chance that like maybe you have your just like a ship in space or something, or you're just playing like if you can just ramp the Boba turn and ignore the board, you will catch up. Ramping is still basically king versus Boba. If you can just ramp by the turn that they're getting a fire spray out, you're gonna be taking the fire spray. Even if you eat 5 damage from it, you can take it with Palp next turn, and then you're often in a pretty good position there. I mean, a lot of it's just don't let them get like eight what's it called, resources worth of stuff on the flip turn if you can avoid it.
Yeah. Are you resourcing No Good to Me Dead in that matchup?
No, generally not. Like I would say, Boba and Vader are the main reasons that card is in there.
Right.
Because it kind of and Chirrut, it's really good against Chirrut too.
Yeah.
And what do I side versus Boba Green? I actually tend to only side one card, and that's probably my third trade risk.
Right.
I feel like the main deck is pretty overall pretty good against Boba Green, but the third trade risk, um, there's plenty of stuff you want to steal from both Boba Yellow and Boba Green. The Boba unit itself, their own super laser technician, and then there's 3-drop, 2-drop space units, right?
Okay. What about hero mid range? I mean, so the Han Greens, the Luke Greens of the world.
Easy matchups. Don't have to do a whole lot to win.
Yeah, don't have to do a lot to win versus those matchups. I agree, but I still side the end game units because I feel like their win conditions in a lot of situations are so if it's Han Green, then it will be the Han unit and home one plays, right? So they tend to get to around 8 to 10 resources before the game ends, and Devastator's very hard for them to deal with. So sometimes I side in the third Devastator. Relentless sometimes is hard to deal with, right?
And by very hard, I mean basically Han Green doesn't have an answer for it.
Yeah, they just don't.
Luke could be running a Vanquish, but probably not.
I mean, Luke also cribbles to Traitorous too if he doesn't have an answer to that. If
Traitorous,
if he shields something on turn 2 or 3 and then you steal it.
All right.
But generally, it's not a lot of siding for. It's maybe 2-3 cards for those matchups.
All right. Soft control, all the villain blue green. I mean, I think this can be Krennic, that can be Iden, this can be Palp. All of them are good decks. I mean, I think that they're actually tier 1 decks, because they pick on some other things. But what are you trying to do?
And this is where I think our approaches might differ a little bit, but there's probably a lot of similarities, but some differences, right? So my take on both soft and hard control is maintaining as much more card advantage than them as I can, right? So Palp draws, I tend to use that as much as possible. So at the start of the game, I go wide, and then some point mid to late game, I'll start transferring my units that have pinged them as much as possible for extra draw power in the end game. And end game, I have plenty of steal potential and big game units to close it out, as well as combo plays with sneak attack.
Yeah, and for me, the big things is pulling Bodies to get big events that you don't want to deal with, like super lasers, because oftentimes you're going to be able to get after Palp flips, you're probably going to have board control, and if you can snipe the super laser out from them, then there's a good chance that you're just going to snowball from there, because if you flip Palp, you have most of control of the board, you have barrages and etc. Like you can basically not let them get on the board unless they have something big like a super laser, and if you could stop that with Bodhi, also running Relentless really helps there too. So the plan is ramp as fast as you can, try to get Relentless out before super laser really helps.
And I think they're probably trying to get Relentless out too for you.
I mean, yeah, but the events don't. I mean, there's events in this deck, but they're not the same as blue. I feel like they're not as important. Like Relentless is good, but it's not that I can burn it with a shoot first and then change a heart it, and then things are bad.
That's exactly right.
And so that's the end of the game too. And I'm glad you said that. I was thinking that too. The 1-cost events are important then.
Yeah. I don't actually side. I side out shoot first sometimes versus them, but I don't side out no good to me dad that often.
Yeah.
Right, and that's another one that you can use to burn out a card before you play something else with the Relentless out on the opponent's side.
All right.
And with Bounty Hunter Crew at command, you can also just grab more Exchange of Hearts, more Devastators. So the idea is just try to edge them out in value and stay ahead. And that works in kind of for both soft and hard control.
All right. My deck's mid-range red, Vader and Chirrut, which are more similar than people think. I don't know if I've said that before, but, there's a lot of similarities between those two. What are you trying to do?
So mid-range red, so Chirrut I've played against maybe twice in the 5 Showdown. And I almost treat it more on the the aggro side, even though it's not an aggro deck. I treat it more on that level, like a Sabine
is on
and
that,
the
yeah.
Boba Yellow. And I try to trade, heal, and then reach the flip turn and change the game that way. So we've already discussed kind of how I side for Boba Yellow. I think it's very much similar for that. Green Vader, though, I side into more end game, and then I try to out ramp them as much as possible.
Yeah, I think Vader has a better shot than Turret. I mean, either way, I mean, both of those decks played properly should be trying to top deck you. You know, because you can do that before and then take a lot of your options away. But I think Palpatine is resistant to it. Vader, I mean, the games that I win against Palp, I mean, it's primarily because they couldn't answer the Vader. You know, so if they draw multiple copies of No Good to Be Dead, it's a problem.
Yeah. One card that is especially good versus this deck, with those red decks, is for Surrender, right? That puts us in a kind of tough position. But there's ways we can get out of it with the Palp draws.
And either one of those decks should be using 3 copies of Force Surrender. Turret's actually better at dumping the hand because he has K2, which should be used for discard against Palp, not for damage. Both of them has Force Throw, where, I mean, the other thing that, you know, Palp Yellow is kind of like this because a lot of times it doesn't have units out. I mean, it's okay to Force Throw if they have one card left and you don't have a Force unit. I mean, the one card left is probably really important for them, and that's
I will say there's not many times you get down to one card in Palp with the draw. That is one of the.
If it's immediately after, it's immediately after Force Surrender. I mean, it's usually what it is. But I mean, at that point, you don't care if it does damage or kill to unit. As far as
I mean, the problem with Force Surrender is like from the opponent's side, it often wastes most, if not all, of your turn. So if I'm Palp and I already have enough card advantage, and you only get rid of my 2 worst cards, and I still have 7, 8, 9 cost thing to throw down still, you kind of you might even lose the game off of wasting your turn. Like, oh look, you got rid of an ISB agent and a shoot first. I don't need that on the turn that I'm going to throw Vader down. So now I've swung complete tempo on that. Like it's a weird balance where like the card can wreck you, or sometimes it can be your opponent's folly.
Yeah, and you have to look at what you have, right? And how many cards are in their hand. I mean, that's a very important thing. On Vader, I would actually bring in the Devastators. Had I brought it to Madison, I would have had Devastator as well, because a lot of times actually Vader can out-ramp Palp. And Force Lightning is one that you didn't mention, but that's one of the key cards against Palpatine, because one, if they're not looking for it, they can really screw up their whole game by leaving a Super Laser Tech open to our Super Laser Tech plus Force Lightning, and it's one of the also few answers to Star Destroyers.
Yeah, it's the only card Vader actually has to deal with big things. I mean, and it has its conditions, so like it's fair.
Well, that and Force Throw sometimes, but
yeah.
Okay, hard control. Blue Boba, Red Iden, Blue Vader. I mean, they're all kind of trying to do the same thing, but what's your game plan?
Very similar, right? Maintain hand advantage over them, but in my case, I look for I keep playing a slow game, kind of toe to toe with them, and then I just look for one opening. So say I'm going wide and poking them early to mid game with my units, get them to around 20, right? And then maybe wait for them to super laser blast my board, so they exhaust all their resources. Then I just suddenly play a sneak attack and a Devastator and hit them for 10, right?
Nasty.
Yeah. That opening is what I look for.
I mean, I think in general, hard control doesn't have access to green, and that means that they are always susceptible to getting ramped into the Devastator or the Relentless before they can actually play their Super Laser Blast, and that's huge still, and that's like the biggest answer in general. We see a lot for these up to the other control decks into the hard controls. You really just got to go for Relentless play and just ramp as much as you can. Because if you ramp and then flood the board.
Yeah, and conversely, a lot of these decks that have like a couple of big threats and then an alternative win tradition of mill. I'm not sure that them playing their one Avenger is a good idea against Palp deck with 3
Yeah,
change of
exactly.
hearts.
Yeah, they don't
Yeah,
have a lot of
actually,
units. You'll take them.
So one thing I try to do against these hard controls with Avenger is my units like ISB Agent and even Greedo become kind of good late game because it
Yeah.
puts a extra body on board that you can just stack away for their Avenger effect. And then Tacster mentioned the looping with Bounty Hunter Crew and Restock. Command is great versus these hard control decks because when they're playing Vigilance, sometimes they mill your good cards and that turns on Command to add those good cards back to hand. You might mill the Relentless or Devastator and then you just add that back, right?
So they found your cards for you.
Yeah, they found your cards for you. Yep.
Yeah, no, and it's interesting because you have Restock to bring anything back, you know, and then you have Command to bring unit backs, and then if you want to, you can have the Bounty Hunter for events. So that's kind of cool stuff. Blue Boba has some similar things going on, you know, in his world. I was
something that we
Tarkin.
probably took for granted, but we didn't discuss so much in this conversation, is just how good Change of Heart is versus mid-range end control, right? So it's just
Yeah.
It stops them in their tracks.
Yeah.
All right. So wrap it up. Both of you guys had turns. What do you tell people, or what advice would you have for our watchers in getting ready for a big tournament? What you're trying to do as you go up.
Yeah, so recognize the meta of your specific tournament is the biggest thing that I've realized in set 1, and I think it's going to continue into set 2. So early on in set 1, very prevalent was Boba Green, right? And a lot of people were building to just beat Boba Green. But then the answers kind of widened the meta so much, and then it became kind of like almost a cyclical meta depending on where you are, between aggro, mid-range, including Boba Green, and some of these control decks, hard control, soft control, and then now even this deck. So kind of recognize the biggest concentration of the meta for your tournament, and then tailor your main deck towards that, and then fill your side deck out for kind of the secondary sites that you will see. Right. That's my suggestion.
All right. What advice do you have, Tech? You've done very well at some very big tournaments.
Not as much I haven't played in a lot of big turns for this one yet, but you know, we'll give it time. But yeah, I mean, I think just like really knowing how your deck plays and knowing your matchups is really important. Like, obviously, picking your deck into the meta is important, and then actually knowing your play lines, knowing your way out. Like, how can I actually beat aggro as a control deck? How can I actually, like, everyone's gonna have a good matchup, everyone's gonna have a bad matchup, everyone's gonna have their okay matchups, and just knowing your play lines and figuring those out is important.
All right. Well, I think we got to land this plane. Thanks everybody for watching. Before we go, though, let's bring it home. So, what are you most excited about? Set 2, Shadows of the Galaxy, a couple of weeks away. We'll start with Sunny.
So, I think testing all the new leaders, right?
Mm-hmm.
But 2 specific leaders I have in mind to start are Kira, and then the Red Han new leader. So I want to try those as much as possible. Then I think the card choices will fit in depending on the deck that you're trying out. But testing all the new leaders is my favorite.
Kira is a strong control leader. I mean, people are misevaluating that card. I mean, you need to think it through, you know, a little bit more. But she has a tactical deploy like Palp.
Yes,
Yeah.
Exactly.
Right. What's your excitement level here, Tacster?
I mean, I'm also similarly excited about like, I'm not an aggro player, but man, Han does seem cool. Like, Han is like, I'm not, you know, there's different kinds of aggro, I guess. That is to say, I'm not a fan of Sabine at all, but you know, I could see myself doing some Han.
A little different aggro.
Just it's value, you know, like it's the value you can get, and there's some sneaky combos I think you're gonna be able to pull off with him, especially when the fact that he has unlimited play things at -1 cost after he flips. There's going to be something broken there, and if you can pile that in with some card draw and some other stuff, I feel like there's a lot of play there. So Han, like the first one, I think has potential to break the game a little bit.
Yeah, and
we'll see if it's
he
enough.
has synergy with Grit. I mean, and there's the obvious aggro leaders. The other
Yeah.
not obvious aggro leader is Grand Inquisitor. I mean, I think there's two variants of that are aggro relevant. I don't know that they're best decks in Villain, but particularly Inquisitor Yellow, I think, is pretty strong. What you
I
got
know
up with?
yeah.
What are you most excited about, Platt? I haven't asked you that.
You think somebody's going to come along and break second chance? I want to buy 3
The
second
blue one?
chances
Blue
right
one.
away, dude.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not. It's going to be.
I want that card to be good.
Seems like
That's a card.
Find it right away, but in 3 or 4 weeks, somebody's going to break second chance, and you're going to wish you had 3 of them.
We're looking at you, Sus. If you're listening to this. All right, guys. Thanks for watching this masterclass. I think this is an excellent deck. I think the archetype will exist, beyond set 1 for sure. And we'll be back with more of these soon.
Yes.
Later.
Thank you.